Welcome to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm Nate Hedrick.
And I'm David Bright. We're both pharmacists and real estate investors that believe that real estate investing does not have to distract from a meaningful career in pharmacy.
Each episode, we share stories that educate and inspire pharmacists to leverage real estate investing as a part of your financial plan. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good, thanks. How you doing, man?
Good. We're ramping up here. This is officially busy season for the real estate market for me, but it's also been kind of a weird market. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, it's felt weird on our end too. Like it seems like pricing of a house is really critical. I'm seeing some things that hit the market and just sit for a while. We tried pricing a flip house a little aggressively just in the last couple of weeks and ended up with multiple offers, over asking price, waived inspections, escalation clause, like all the things we were talking about a year or two ago when the market was just crazy hot. Like I'm starting to see some of that coming back, which is just wild. I was almost hoping we weren't going back to that.
I just had one this weekend. It listed on Friday, like $289. I had a client that wanted to purchase it. We offered $315, which I think was right in line with the comps. And they got an offer at like $340 with $10,000, no appraisal. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. Like no inspections. Like what is happening? It's not 2021. Come on.
Yeah, it just really seems like, because even just a few months ago, that wasn't how this was going. Like we listed a house a few months ago, nothing like that. And it just seems to be heating up. So it feels like this is really a time when you need an advocate in your corner that really understands the market and what's going on precisely in this local market today.
Yeah. We just had a case of this too. I had a client come to me that was working with another agent. Things didn't work out. They're actually going to start working with me as a result, but navigating that and helping them to understand how to do that appropriately and seeing the reasoning behind it, right? If you don't have that good advocate, if somebody's not actually representing you well, it might be time to move on because this is a market where you can't afford that. You're not going to be able to move quickly enough. And so I'll drop our shameless plug for a second. If you are looking for a real estate agent, we'd be happy to help, right? We have the concierge service. We can get you connected with somebody great. If you head to yfprealestate.com, you can sign up to have a chat with me, learn more about the service, answer any questions you might have, and we'll get you connected with a fantastic agent because again, it's been more important recently just because of the weirdness of the market. So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. And having a good real estate in your corner is one of several key pieces to getting started with greater confidence. And today's guest talks about a slew of other ways to help get someone that's new to real estate investing into that game.
Yeah. So we got a chance to interview Danny Mach. Danny and I have known each other for quite a long time. We actually connected way back when I first started Real Estate RPH and he was just getting started in real estate investing. So Danny is a pharmacist, graduated from the University of Oklahoma. He is an investor. He's bought a bunch of single family homes, some duplexes with some partners, just a really great experienced guy that shares his story really well. So we're excited to have him on the show today.
Yeah, I really appreciate his motivation, his desire to learn, kind of knowing that he didn't know everything about real estate investing, but he just kind of grew slowly, methodically, learned along the way. And we get into some really interesting discussion towards the end too about how to double check your analysis and work with partners and kind of the concept of safety in numbers and working with other people.
Yeah, I really like that, especially if you're someone that might feel a little uneasy about getting started. There's some real practical tips in here. Danny discusses how to find that win-win when you're doing some sort of collaboration, and it just allows you to work better, right? You can actually reduce the risk of real estate investing if you're doing it the right way. Again, he's got a great story. He shares it really well, and he's just a great guy. So with that, we will take you guys to the interview, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, Danny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, this is awesome. You and I got the chance to connect ages ago. We were just talking before we hit record. I think it was 5 years ago when we first connected about real estate investing. And we got reintroduced by Tim Ulbrich, which is weird since we know each other. But it's kind of cool to get the chance to reconnect and talk all things real estate investing. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I feel honored to be here. It feels so surreal. It's a very different experience. I told some buddies the other day about it that, hey, I got a little podcast, speaking on one. And it's funny because my buddies, like 6 months ago, we were just talking real estate and all that. And he was like, tell me whenever that podcast episode comes through. And I was just joking, oh, yeah, right, that's not going to happen or whatever. And then here we are.
Yeah, here we are, man. Well, good. Well, again, this is really cool. I'm excited to talk to you tonight. Why don't you just jump in, give everybody a little bit of background on your pharmacy story and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I graduated pharmacy school in 2017 from the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. And before that, I was at OU for the undergrad for 4 years. And then, jumped into pharmacy school for another 4 years. graduated 2017 and immediately just jumped into the workforce, started working in outpatient pharmacy and kind of went from there. So I worked for the Chickasaw Nation out in Ada, Oklahoma. So I started there in 2017 in an outpatient pharmacy. It's a really unique place. All the patients there, they don't have a copay. Everything's funded by the nation. So it's a big benefit for Chickasaw employees and Chickasaw, citizens. So it's very unique in that aspect. We don't have registers or credit card machines or anything like that. It's all pick up and go. So that's a very different experience, from a retail pharmacy and all that, where you got to go through billing and, PAs and all that stuff. So we do that all on the back end. That's how we get reimbursements and all that. But as far as the copay goes, patient doesn't see that.
Somewhere there's a pharmacist listening on hold right now, listening to that music, right, that we all know. And it's just like, Danny, I want to be doing that. So that's awesome, man. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to, not have to deal with that. But I mean, definitely we still have our own battles and issues that we have to go through. So fast forward a little bit. So I was in the outpatient pharmacy there from 2017 to 2019. And so during my rotations in 2017, I started learning more about informatics, pharmacy informatics. So a big interest of mine, I've always been interested in tech, and I actually worked at Dell for a year before pharmacy school. Yeah, a little side note there. So always been kind of like, into tech a little bit, and then, jumped into pharmacy, wanted to do something healthcare related and all that. And so I learned about informatics in 2017, and obviously I couldn't do residency or anything like that by then. It was a little too late for that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe, I can learn more about it, maybe network some people and just learn more about it. So 2017, I started and I ran into a friend at the Chickasaw Nation. He's a buddy of another friend, and he saw me in the cafeteria and was like, hey, aren't you Danny Mach? I was like, oh yeah. Hey, haven't seen you in a while. And we just started connecting. And I was like, hey, what are you doing out here? And he's like, oh, well, I'm the informatics pharmacist out here. I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So I kind of made it an effort to go ahead and learn more or try to reach out to him. And I made time with my manager where I could shadow him, a few times a week or even a couple times a week whenever we slowed down a bit, just to get more exposure, learn more about the field and all that stuff. So that was about a year or so. And then 2019, he was leaving for a new position. And so the position was soon to be vacant, and he ended up referring me to the position. Got a quick interview from my director who I already knew. And we kind of went from there and figured I could, I don't want to say take over, but, kind of handing of the torch or passing of the torch to me. So, and that's kind of where I'm at today. So
I love that. I love that there's this story of this kind of proactive and intentional way of approaching your career. You kind of step out of your comfort zone. You try new things. I know we were talking just before we got going about the real estate side of things too. And I'm hearing a lot of those same themes kind of on both sides, on the professional pharmacy side and on the real estate side. So could you walk folks through a little bit of that real estate journey and what that's looked like for you so far?
Backtrack a little bit. In 2017, whenever I started working, we were living about an hour away from where I worked. One way. So I think it's about 60 miles one way. So a long drive, plenty of time to either, listen to music, think to yourself, listen to radio, all sorts of stuff. So I got to the point where I started, well, I better make use of this time. Let's go to podcasts. So I started learning more about more entertainment podcasts, crime podcasts, pop culture podcasts, things that seemed more interesting to help with the drive. And after that, it got kind of old. And I was like, you know what? I should actually really utilize this time to learn something. And I've always been pretty interested in investing, whether it's the stock market or even just like selling things on Craigslist or things like that, little side hustle type deals. So I started listening to BiggerPockets, and all I did was kind of go through Spotify and just check, different investing type podcasts. And I was like, okay, real estate, never really thought about it. It says it's a podcast, even if you're not an investor, just learn about it. I was like, okay, let's go for it. So I started listening to it, and you can learn quite a bit with an hour each way, 2 hours a day, help the time go by. I mean, I always found it so interesting and all that. So eventually I got into the forum, started learning more. That's how I met Nate, reached out. Okay, there's got to be some other pharmacists out there who are out there to learn, get more, investing, do more investing side hustles or even more real estate related things. So I was like, okay, pharmacist and real estate, there's got to be someone out there. And that's how I ran into Nate. So yeah, that was cool. And then we connected. Obviously, I bugged you with a few questions here and there about real estate and, balancing that with pharmacy life and, all that stuff. So, and then fast forward to 2019, after analyzing hundreds of deals, at times paralysis by analysis, all that stuff. So a good year of learning and all that stuff, saving money, And then so finally 2019, my mom came up to me and said one of her clients was selling a house. And I was like, oh, great. So let's just take a look at it. Ran some numbers on that. I really liked the house. And that's how I got my first deal. So I took a leap of faith. It was like, okay, numbers add up, all this stuff. And like, let's go ahead and just give it a shot. So.
See, I love that. And I love that, again, when you and I first connected, it was, Nate, like, I want to learn more about this. Like, I'm just diving into it. Like, I'm ready to buy my first place. And now you've bought several and like, we're going to get into this, but just to see where you've come in that short period of time, there are so many pharmacists listening right now that want to do exactly what you've done over the last 4 years. And so like, I want to dig into that and figure out how you did it, right? Because that's what everybody wants to know. So let's start just a little bit like going back to that first deal. It sounds like a lot of the work that you did up front is what allowed you to feel comfortable buying that, right? It was a lot of deal analysis, a lot of talking to other people, a lot of living in the market so that when the right deal came along, you were ready to pound. Is that pretty accurate? It sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, a year or so of just prep work, learning more about real estate, running my numbers, getting over that fear of paralysis of analysis, obviously saving up enough capital to make the deal happen. That made it a lot easier, a lot more comfortable for me to jump in and pull the trigger on the deal. If I didn't do any research and I just had that mindset where, hey, I just want to do real estate and I'm just going to wait for the deal to come, I may get a bunch of deals. I mean, this deal very well could have came and I would have froze and, made it if I let it slip. So
I think that's so important because so many people think that they want to do real estate as an investment, but don't put the time and the effort into the prep work and the research and the market analysis and the deal analysis. And so, like you said, deals come along and they miss them and they say, well, this real estate investing is hard. I can't find any deals. And it's like, well, okay, maybe it's that you're not actually looking. Like, start looking. You have to do this upfront work. So it's again, if people are listening, thinking about how do I jump in? How do I start? How do I follow what Danny's doing? Like, start putting in the work now. You don't have to be ready to buy today, but start doing the prep work now so that when the right deal does come along, you have all that background legwork already done. So that's awesome.
As far as that first deal too, there's something about saving up for that first deal that you mentioned that can be really hard. And I feel like sometimes the numbers that come through an example make that really tangible. So for the people that are out there thinking, well, do I have to save up like $100,000, $200,000? Like how much savings do I really have to do to get into this? Can you walk us through the numbers of either that specific deal or one of your first deals? And what did the saving look like? What was the purchase price? Did you do any rehab? Kind of the numbers of the deal.
Yeah. So that last deal was more like a ready type situation. So it was numbers worked out where, I did rental analysis, figure out how much I could rent for, obviously figure out what the rate I was getting and the mortgage, my monthly payment and all that stuff. So that was a little more simple. I'd say if we want to talk about a different deal that requires a little more capital, I'd say this rehab project I'm working on. Actually, we just finished. It would be my first rehab project. I guess it's Burr because we're working on the refinance. So this one required a lot more capital because you're talking about, down payment and then rehab costs, unexpected rehab costs, all those just added up. So in this situation, I don't know, do you want me to do kind of like a dive in this overall deal?
That sounds great.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And particularly some of those things like you're already making people nervous. Like, wait, there's unanticipated rehab costs. So yes, I think this is really good to dive into to talk about kind of the good, bad, and the ugly of what a real estate investment can look like.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So let's see. So beginning of 2022 was when I figured I wanted to do more real estate. So that I made a real big effort to kind of get outside my comfort zone. I figured, hey, these BiggerPockets and YouTube and all that stuff, it can only get you so far in terms of your network. People always say your network is your net worth. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead. My wife, who's actually a realtor, she started in 2021. We both were, okay, let's go ahead and go to some more real estate meetups and all that. So I went to more real estate meetups, met people along the way, learned even more about real estate, learned more about different strategies and, what other people are doing, even met some other pharmacists who were doing real estate as well. So towards the beginning of the year, I made it my goal where I wanted to do a BRRRR or a rehab project, whatever it was, even if it's a flip, just something that required renovation where I learned more about it. So that required way more capital than just a down payment. Even if it was like an under market valued home, it was something we had to make sure we had a lot extra for the rehab. So having that preparation ahead of time, knowing like this is what I want to get into and having that discipline to put that money to the side it took, a group effort and all that stuff. And actually part of the deal, I refunded like a good chunk of the rehab through private lending through a friend. So just to backtrack on the purchase price. So we actually got this deal is through a foreclosure auction, which was through a friend that we met through network. And one day I was just asking him and his partner just about questions about real estate and all that stuff. And one day he just said, "Hey, would you be interested in a property and like a rehab property?" And that took me offset because I was asking questions about something else. So anyway, he brought the deal. He's like, "Hey, be a 90K purchase price, 5K assignment fee. And, rehab, this is what we're estimating, which is about 25,000 or so, which, we allotted more, about 30, I think we kind of went up to about $35,000 in rehab. And, obviously that does count like the down payment and all that stuff. So yeah, 90K purchase price, 25K to 35K rehab. So all that, we're looking at a good chunk of change, $50,000 to $60,000. And I was in the situation where I could, pull some money out. We have different avenues of sourcing the deal, 401k. I had a Roth IRA that I could pull out of, different ways to fund the deal. So instead of that, I figured I'd approach a friend because, 401k and, the Roth IRA were more like, I'd rather sit it and grow and all that. So I figured I'd reach out to a friend who I knew had money that would be willing to help fund the deal. And I figured I'd, rather than him having the money in the bank, I figured I'd offer him a deal. Obviously, it was if he was comfortable with the deal happening. And I figured, hey, I'd rather help a friend out and kind of show how, how lending on this, although it can be scary, as long as you, trust who you're lending to and all that, like, it can help both people, so. And just to go a little further on that deal, we ended up spending about $35,000 in rehab costs due to unexpected costs. I mean, we had to go fix the plumbing, the water line, what else? Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. We ran into issues. It was not a lot into the budget. And the nice thing too is the friends that we bought it from helped walk us through the deal and had, helped us with network contractors and help figure out what costs we, should focus on, like what's worth helping the ARV, like what goes towards it, what doesn't go through it towards it. Little things that like, hey, may not help with the ARV, but it actually could help with the tenant who's going to stay in there later, help tenant satisfaction. But we had all these things pop up and we had the, now, of course, we always brought it up we always talked it out and he always told me like, this is the reason why we create a little extra buffer and, have space to absorb some of these unexpected costs. So the whole process took about 2-3 months, but learned a lot. And, once we get through this refinance, cash out refinance, on to the next deal.
Well, I really like several things about this, really a lot of your strategy behind this. So like I'm taking notes like frantically here. One of the big things that I love is that you had a lot of support, right? And so when there were issues, you could phone a friend, you could ask people. You didn't have to be the expert before you dove in. You had clearly done your research. You clearly had some experience, but you still had people around you that you could lean on for support. So you had like the phone a friend going. You had someone, this kind of a more advanced strategy. You mentioned a $5,000 assignment fee. So you're working with someone that is, helping you find that deal, whether you call it a wholesaler or a bird dog strategy, or I hear a lot of different terms for that, but you have someone out there that's helping you to find those. And they found a deal that was valuable enough that you were willing to pay that fee for that person to bring you that deal. And then you also worked with a friend to help lend the money so that you were able to make this happen without doing some of those things that I'm sure that there's a risk averse pharmacist out there somewhere that just got nervous hearing you think about clearing out your 401k to do a real estate deal, right? So you were able to kind of dial back the risk, work with partners. So you had a lot of really good strategy in there. The one I want to dig into though, for just another minute is the rehab, because I really enjoy the big rehab projects myself. And I know that as deep as I get into a spreadsheet, there's always things that I'm not going to catch. So you mentioned a $25,000 rehab that became a $35,000 rehab. Is there anything that you would recommend to a pharmacist that's looking at this rehab list of like, I should check extra for this, or I should have an inspection over this? Or is it just one of these things where just make sure you budget a cushion in there?
Yeah, I guess for me, so we started the project thinking more as like all cosmetic, mainly cosmetic issues. I wish I did a little more due diligence and did more like the plumbing, the water lines and things like that. So I'd say the best strategy would be for me, since I've only done one rehab project, I think creating an extra buffer. Like I think most of the deals that we try to buy, or moving forward, that we'd like to stay in that 70% ARV range or number, hopefully around there post rehab, just helping, I guess, having that in our mindset that can help create that little buffer that we hope can absorb those extra costs.
You mentioned, so for this one, you're pretty much all in at about 130. Where do you think the ARV will be now that it's all done?
170.
Yeah, so that's pretty darn good, though. You'll be able to pull most of that cash back out, which is great.
Yeah, that's the plan. So hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the part that until you do it the first time, like it just feels like this weird magic that happens, and you're like, I don't know, the bank, I think they're going to cut me a check. I don't know, but like until you do that full burr, until you have the bank come in and appraise it, send you the check, like that doesn't feel real until it actually happens. So I totally get where you're at. I've been there.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I want to mention too is like I've already mentally prepared myself that if I don't pull all my money out, or chunk of change or whatever it is that comes out of it, like even if it's just half, I think the whole experience getting into it, like your first real estate property is like not necessarily your best deal, but it's the most important one. So for me, the way I view this, like this is my first rehab project. It may not be the best one, but it's the most important one. It's the one that's going to get me into it. So that's kind of where I'm going into this appraisal for.
It's super important. Yeah, because so many people get hung up on I have to find a deal and it has to cash flow a certain number of dollars per month and I can't leave anything in it. It's got to be perfect because TikTok told me it could be perfect, so it has to be. Like, it's just crazy. Instead of focusing on, this doesn't have to go 100%, right? I can do all right, and the education I'm gaining is way more worthwhile than the extra $2,000 I was going to make if it was a perfect burr or whatever, right? I've done that in my own deals where it's like, yeah, I'm going to leave $10,000 in this deal, but I've learned $20,000 worth of stuff by dealing with this X, Y, and Z problem. So yeah, super important mindset and something that, again, to anybody that's out there listening, that's new, thinking about starting, or maybe has one or two deals under their belt, it's okay to get stuff wrong. That's how you learn. That's how you're going to get better at this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the other question I wanted to ask too, though, since we're talking about this particular deal, is something like that. Do you self-manage these properties? Do you have a property manager? Like, I think there's the upfront stage, right, where you're finding the deal, wanting the rehab, managing some of that rehab yourself, having contractors do the work. Then there's the back half where like you have to go be a pharmacist tomorrow, right? And everybody else has to go back to work. So like, do you manage that day in and day out yourself, or do you have a property manager that comes in and helps you out with that?
Yeah, I manage them myself. Right now, my portfolio is small enough where I feel I can manage it myself. For the 11 duplex deal that we have with 7 other partners, we have one other partner who's managing it with me. So that kind of helps a little bit. But in terms of keeping up with that one, I'm still all over it, keeping up exactly, kind of know what's going on. I still know what's going on with that one for sure. So that helps a lot with, or my current role actually helps a lot with that too. I mean, with my current role, I don't really see patients anymore. So that kind of helps with being able to balance, certain property management duties and all that. But still gets busy, but it still helps. It's a little better than, having the balance running the drive-through and, filling meds and counseling a patient and all that. So.
No, so I'm thinking that someone probably is listening and just fell out of their chair when they heard 11 duplex deal, right? Like you went from like just getting your first one a few years ago to just doing your first rehab to like, wait, you just bought 11 duplexes. So fundamentally, I want you to talk for just a minute about what was attractive about this gear shift into working with 6 other partners and trying to buy 11 duplexes, 22 units all at once.
Yeah. So I was purchased with this deal by a friend of mine who actually recently got into real estate a lot more heavily in the past couple of years or so. And so anyways, we started talking, and it's funny, he didn't know I was really that into real estate and all that until last year. And so whenever we were talking, he's like, man, why don't we connect earlier and all that? But we just, I guess it just never aligned or whatever. So, but yeah, he approached me with the 11 duplex deal, which is definitely way bigger than I expected anything I'd be, getting into. He presented with, the contributions per each partner, different what cash flow he's thinking, the setup with the 11 duplexes and how that was appealing. That's a little more unique than your normal tenant setup. With this property, they're all, I guess the best way to put it, they're all subleased to students and all that. But there's a managing company who's our, I guess, one tenant who helps manage all those. And so I guess, I don't want to say it's Airbnb arbitrage, but it's like a form of that where we're subleasing to students, I guess. So that was attractive in the aspect that our vacancy, as long as they were still in business, our vacancy would go down. That kind of helped within the numbers more than the typical property analysis where you're factoring that in. But I think the most appealing, sorry, I don't know if I'm getting off track a little bit, but this was the first deal I did with that friend of mine. So, and I've always wanted to do something with him. We've talked about it for like months before that. And it gave us, me and I think him, a chance to understand each other's strategies, goals. For example, even the property analysis, I made a point to challenge him on why I thought, these are my numbers versus your numbers. And then we kind of talked about like why, we can tweak this number to make it, a little better. For example, the vacancy, we can tweak that a little bit. And then, the fact that we essentially have like a property manager who manages it all for, does the cleaning, gets the tenants, all that stuff, keeps up with the properties. That was like an X factor, keeping up with these properties, maintaining them, having someone at that level, like it made it more appealing. So that's kind of how we jumped into it and like, okay, let's do it. But it was very intimidating. I mean, contribution, I think each property's contribution was about $75,000, which is way bigger than any of the other deals I did. Everything else I had up until then was about 40,000 or so, down payment, closing costs and all that stuff. So the total 11 duplex deal was 3.3 million. And then, we had to get contributions each member. I mean, just the down payment check alone was huge, a little intimidating. And then it's not just your money. You have 7 other people's money that you're handling on that. So, but just with the partnerships and, bouncing ideas with my friend for not just that one deal, but we've already done like some legwork, learning about each other, more about as investors, more than just friends. That kind of helped where whenever this deal popped up, it made it a lot easier to, make things move a little quicker.
Yeah, I think there's something really there about how you've kind of done this going it alone, buying your own rental properties and doing that. And then this shift into working with partners. Because if I'm doing just really quick math, 7 people sharing 11 duplexes, you could argue that's kind of like each person has a duplex and a half, right? So you could, on one hand, you could have gone out and bought 1 or 2 duplexes by yourself, but you saw value in these partners. And you've already explained a little bit of that, but do you want to keep going with partners? Are you finding that this is valuable, or are you thinking, you know what, now investing by myself, I get the control, that's better. Which side of the fence are you finding yourself now that you've done a little bit of both?
Probably, I mean, I see the benefit in both, but I think being able to manage, like, for example, this last rehab, definitely had quite a bit of control. A lot of the decisions, let's say if I did the rehab with those 7 other partners again, I mean, those are big decisions and I would have to run by them and all that stuff. So the aspect of control and flexibility may be a little different. Luckily with the duplexes, they're pretty, for the most part, they're pretty rent ready. And the partners were almost like silent partners. So it made it really easy. They had a lot of trust in my friend. They'd done a deal together with him before. So they had a lot of trust in him. And so I was really just kind of running the show with him, which was great. We didn't have any issues. We never butted heads or anything like that so far. But there's still that level of control where we still have our differing, strategies that, later down the road, you want to do those more projects that involve more work. Obviously, they're going to be more conflicting ideals. So I'd say being able to run it on my own, having that control would be better. But obviously, that would require more capital and all that. So.
Yeah, it seems like you've really found a happy balance there with, some people that, their goal and their role is to be less involved. You enjoy being more involved and you found someone you can work with there. What I feel like I'm gathering too in this is that there can be some value in these kind of tough decisions, the big decisions, the $3.3 million price tag. You see all of this, and to be able to bounce that off of someone else and have that kind of reassurance and collaboration sounds like it's also really helpful on a larger deal like this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely don't like regret or anything like that going to these duplex deals. I'm still learning a lot. I mean, if I had never even jumped in the deal, I wouldn't even know what it's like, to be on the side of partnering with other people and all that. I mean, there's definitely value there.
And I'm assuming too that with roles like that and everybody kind of playing a different part in the process, I'm guessing that at some point you wrote that down, right? There's a partnership agreement. There's some kind of document. You didn't all just get together, like shake hands and say, we're going to go spend $3.3 million together. So how did that break down as far as the partnership agreement and kind of the formality of that process for those that haven't been through something like that?
It was a lot more informal than I expected in a way, because I mean, you create an LLC together, writing an operating agreement that lines everything out. Everyone has certain contributions that they're putting in. So those aspects, are a little intimidating when you're thinking about like, I'm forming this partnership with all these people. What if someone doesn't agree with this, and all that stuff? Like what if they're butting heads and all that stuff? So those were there in my mind because I didn't know a lot of the partners in there. I only knew a couple people in there, but overall the process is pretty informal. I mean, everyone's pretty easygoing. My friend and I ran the numbers. We had a call about it and a little presentation just to go over the numbers and why the numbers make sense, show the different risks and all that, just to be as transparent as possible. And luckily they were like, okay, looks good, and kind of went for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people would find that intimidating, but I think your experience and your comfortability with the one partner especially has made it a little bit easier, it sounds like, to kind of get off onto that next foot. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Because him having that track record and already having a relationship, I think that helped a lot. So that was a little surprising to me because, if someone told me, hey, $75,000, do this, throw in these duplexes, and I'll give you a quick rundown of the numbers. And I don't know, it would take me some time of, thinking about it, analyzing it, challenging it. Even, we really didn't even get challenged that much, which, I don't want to say that everyone's like that or anything like that, but I think with my personality, I would be more prone to do that. But it just made things easier. And that level of trust, it really goes to my friend who brought the deal. I think he's created that level of trust, and I was able to see that on my end as, partner.
But, without all the work we talked about earlier about networking and due diligence and just like all the behind the scenes stuff that you do that doesn't get you a deal, it doesn't put $1 in your pocket, but it grows you in the ways that you need to grow so that when those deals come around, you're ready to do it. Like, I think that's super, super valuable and something that a lot of people miss, right? They see the end result, but they don't see the work that you put in up front, which is 100% essential to get to where you're at today. So I think it's cool. Like the way you talk about it is so casual, but like, it's not. Like, it was a ton of work for you up front to make sure you got to that point. So I don't want people to miss that because it's super important.
Oh yeah, no, it is. Yeah. I mean, you both know, there's a lot of time that even you don't even think about it, that your little things add up of what kind of builds that knowledge, that database of knowledge, real estate knowledge that you collect over time. Little things, like I said, being able to analyze a property in 5 minutes, or being able to talk to contractors, connecting contractors, even as little thing as, going to a 1 hour, 30-minute real estate meetup and just meeting people, talking with people. People like likable people. Like, if, being able to create these relationships just like upon meeting someone, first time, it goes a long way.
All right. So then you've done some personal deals just yourself, this big partnership. What's next? Like, what are you thinking, looking at the market, the way that it's shifting today? Like, what are you planning for 2023 now that we're, a third of the way into it?
Yeah, right now. So the first thing on my plate right now is going through this cash out refinance, to really be able to analyze the deal and figure out, okay, this is what it appraised for, figure out my costs, and just like be able to actually, I don't want to say close the deal, but be able to look back, okay, this is what happened with this, and maybe learn from it. If under appraises, then I was like, okay, well, what happened here? Or if it overappraised, you're like, okay, great. But maybe why did it overappraise? Like, because if overappraised, I mean, in my mind, okay, there's something I may have overlooked, that maybe that area is way better than I thought it was. Who knows? Different, So after we do that cash out refinance, the next deal would be, to me, to move on to the next project, save some capital right now. I want to be able to, so I went through private lending for help some of the rehab. So definitely want to, pay that lender back. Obviously I want to create that relationship for future deals and show them, hey, I'm not this guy who's going to take your money and run away. Like, there's benefit to both of us. And even explain to him, afterwards, say, hey, this is what I did with it. Because right now it's been a pretty smooth process. He doesn't really question what I'm doing with it. We will promise your note and all that. But, once we move on from that, and we return the lent money, we can actually, talk about the deal and see, like, hey, this is what I did. And I'm hoping with that, I can create that understanding from his end, create that trust, and hopefully fuel, future deals and all that. So, but I think definitely rehabbing the next property is kind of what's next I'm looking towards to, and creating more partnerships, meeting more people, still learning more. But like, for example, that friend, we're looking to do a BRRRR together. I've had friends come up to me recently just asking, they'd like to do something together. And even it's not like just to learn, a lot of them just want to learn, which is great. So there's a lot to look forward to for 2023.
Yeah. Wow. Quickly, you're becoming the expert that people are going to turn to rather than the other way around. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think about,
Right.
but yeah.
Well, Danny, I want to shift to our last three questions. This is our final infusion questions, three questions we ask every guest on the show. So the very first one is really trying to get at how you handle all this workload, especially as somebody that self-manages. So what is one tangible strategy that you use to make sure that your investing works hand in hand with your career as a pharmacist?
Yeah, the best way for me to do it, my job is still like, the priority, especially from, not 8 to 5 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's still the priority. So anything that I need, like anything I need to take care of immediately that's work related, that's something I'm going to have to take care of. Like, it doesn't matter with anything coming up with real estate, any of my properties going wrong. Like, that's something I try to address as soon as possible. But as soon as more like if I have some downtime or I could find some time to address it. It is difficult at times when you're getting a phone call and you're like, what could it be? Like, did something bust or or did something break down? Like, who knows? But I think being able to keep those two separate in a way and be able to manage, okay, like your job is still my W-2, my informatics position, my job is still the priority. And then be able, okay, hey, I know I want to resolve whatever's going on with my real estate immediately. But I have to understand that there is some wiggle room most of the time when it comes to something dealing with an issue on that side. So
yeah, I find the same thing when I'm self-managing, that rarely is it an emergency. And even if it is, like, it's solvable by somebody else, right? So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So just understanding that, being able to sort those urgencies and understand what's truly urgent versus something that what feels urgent, it's a little different.
Yeah. What's one resource that's been most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether that's a book, podcast, person, author, website, whatever that would be?
I'd say definitely BiggerPockets. I know it's the answer you guys probably hear the most, or anyone really. But I mean, it's odd. But when I first started my job, everyone was saying, "Hey, you drove an hour every day to work," versus I could work retail 15 minutes down the street or something like that. But I always give credit to that long drive, and that's how I got into real estate, because I feel like if I had a 15-minute drive where you can barely even start a podcast episode, I don't think I'd ever have gotten to real estate. So being able to go, an hour each way, listening to the podcast, definitely BiggerPockets would get me where I'm at today.
I like that. The shout out to the long commute. That's good.
Yeah. The gas stations love it too, I'm sure.
Right. Exactly. All right. Then our third question, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a pharmacist that is contemplating a start in real estate investing?
Number one advice I could give a pharmacist starting would be to take action, whether it's listening to podcasts, learning how to analyze a property and understand it's not as scary as it is, going to networking events, networking, talking to friends that that are interested in real estate or are in real estate. Just doing something is better than nothing. And it's not just listening to BiggerPockets. It's not just YouTube. Like, it's actually physically going there and do something. I mean, you can hear people analyze a deal all the time until you actually sit down, go through the listing and run the numbers. Like 5 minutes, that's all it takes. Or going to on a weekend, a Saturday, go to an event for an hour or two, things like that. They're not, so a lot of them don't even cost anything to do, and it's just more of like you getting there. It's almost like saying, like, for the gym, like when you go to the gym, people are always saying the hardest part is getting there, and to me, like, the hardest part to getting started in real estate is not taking action.
Yeah, I love the very practical. It's not necessarily taking action, like write an offer on a house on day one or something like that, but it's like go to a networking event, do some math, do something, right? But that kind of action feels very achievable. So I love what you're saying. If people want to reach out and find more about you, get in touch with you directly, where can people find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is Instagram at Danny Mach. That'd probably be the easiest way. And you can always email me, dannymach@gmail.com. Those are probably the two best ways.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Danny, thank you so much for joining us again in what has been a 5-year connection culminating in a cool podcast episode. I really appreciate it. I'm pumped to see where you've come in the few short years that we've known each other. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, no, thank you guys. Like I said, I feel so honored to be here, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity.
Love it. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard in today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with us, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group.
As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, An important reminder that the content of this podcast is provided to you for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in this podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with their financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archive newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and therefore may not be accurate at the time you listen to it. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist unless otherwise noted and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer.
Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.